Round
And
two.
now we are live this time.
Hey, we've
Hello,
only been
hello.
live for 3 hours now.
Musty Wargamers Season 8, Episode 15. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in.
And welcome
And,
to the Musty Wargamers.
We got a couple people right off the bat. We've got Chris over at Walkabout Games. We've got Curtis over at Forge and Brush Gaming. Yep, thanks for joining, guys.
Looks like we got Heresy Productions in there too.
Yeah, we got somebody named Heresy Productions over there as well. I think I've seen that guy before.
Knuckleheads.
And so, I think Tim's joining us tonight too. But we haven't seen him yet, but he'll probably be coming in.
Probably wander through.
Yeah.
Hey,
and
Fritz.
so
somebody's standing in front of his computer saying, "You shall not pass."
As we talked about on the Facebook page, our topics for tonight, we have two. We have one that is around like the availability or scarcity of games. Interesting topic around the time of the tariffs and a lot of the information that's been coming from companies like gaming companies, toy companies, things like that about the results. Yeah. But just maybe a greater discussion around like that kind of game scarcity and how that affects quality of games. And then we're also just going to talk about editions for games and just what in your mind is the perfect amount of time to refresh an edition. If, you know, and we could talk about whether that's necessary or not or whatever, but we can discuss that too. And so prior to that, why don't we start our updates for the evening? Rusty, you're in the top right-hand corner, following our traditional rules of the
rotation
of the forum. Of the court, that means you actually start.
The kangaroo court, I see.
Yeah.
Let's see. What have we been doing? Well, we did have a BattleTech game on Sunday. So we finished off our campaign. It's been going on for almost a year now.
Oh wow, that's cool.
That's impressive. Yeah.
I think we went 25 turns.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Which, for some people, that's a long game. I've played many games that long, but we finally got the last 4 turns in. I think it was Sunday, and it wasn't too bad. It went south quickly. If you watch the video, my brother's mechs kept blowing up. He went supernova. So he was doing more damage to us than he was doing to the enemy. So we just kind of suddenly collapsed in a big fireball, literally.
So is it a set amount of turns, or you just call it when you want to call it?
Typically call it when you call it, or when one side gets totally toasted. Gotcha. We had the game that we played. The campaign was on Solaris, so they kept funneling. When a mech would go down, they'd funnel a new one to come in. So you were never without this equal number of mechs on the game tables, but you never knew who was coming on. It was random assortment of mechs that would come in. So if you lost, you could have lost an assault mech, 100-tonner, and then all of a sudden you get a 20-tonner replacing it.
Gotcha. That keeps random. It keeps it, yeah.
Yeah, so you never knew what you're getting, so you kept you on your toes, kind of.
Yep.
And one half the table were pyrotechnics. They were shooting everything that could burn and lighting it on fire, so the entire table was on fire.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we had a major roaring forest fire going, basically.
Clark Stepp has joined us. I just wanted to mention that. Hey, Clark. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Clark. Excuse me.
So that was going on. That went, I think we played 6.5, 7 hours, something like that.
Wow.
The turns for them take a long time. Let's just put it that way. Usually the group I play with over here, we can get 12 turns in roughly in 8 hours.
Okay.
And you think about 6 sessions at 8 hours, rough 7 to 8 hours for this other game. They're slow.
Yeah, that's commitment.
Yeah. Then I would have got more done in the last 2 weeks, but I've been sort of on a commission. Just right after the weekend after our last show, of all things,
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tim. Welcome.
Hey, there he is.
And Mr. Winemaker.
Popped in out of the warp.
Popped in out of the warp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like it.
I was reaching into the dryer to grab clothes out, and my back popped.
Oh gosh.
It was
You
the
shouldn't
muscle.
be doing laundry.
It was just reaching in, and my muscles went ding on my back, kind of tore.
That's why I don't do laundry. It's dangerous.
Danger.
Yeah. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Evidently.
And then Saturday into Sunday, my back, I was just reaching to grab something right here and going over here to rat, and my back went twing again. And it's like somebody flipped a switch, going from level 10 pain to just like nothing, just like that. So,
Well, that's nice that you had a good ending.
so what I think is that my muscles got caught up on my cage and it was like pinching nerves. So. But I did do a little, just a tad bit of work on these guys. The Eagles.
Bigger. There he is.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
cool. Those are Lord of the Rings, right?
Yes.
Very cool.
Magnetized.
Nice.
Impressive.
So I magnetized the Eagles base to the base. So got some nice heavy
That's
duty
smart.
magnets. So makes it easier to store them and not break the stems, hopefully, because they can, move around fairly well. But they hold on fairly decently. So
Cool.
So I got 6 of those. Actually, 8 of them are magnetized, and I still have 2 more bases. These right here, I was gonna just do them like this, and I've just got a wild hair. I'm gonna get some Sculpey putty out and make a sculpted base, kind of like a raised mound, kind of like a rock formation, and stick this up into the rock formation so it's a little higher.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool. I like it.
So gonna make a few different looking ones. So,
yeah.
So my thing is to put some paint on these guys tonight, work on the bases, and then maybe I was working on I got 30 more stands of these guys left.
Oh, ACW?
Yeah.
Wow, nice.
And that will put me at roughly 130 stands finished.
Wow.
That's good.
You're ahead of me.
Yeah. It takes time, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You got that one exactly right.
And then the drink of the night is
Jameson.
Jameson, there you go.
Approved.
Approved. Jameson approved.
Yeah. Good.
Oh,
choice.
that's my update.
Well, how about you, Dan?
I've been busy farming, so I haven't been painting much. That's not unusual during this time of year.
Yeah.
But I did do a little bit. We had a couple of rain events there, so I did finish my mounted cavalry for my 15 mil ACW. So I got 16 of those done. 8 stands, I guess, and then all based and done. And then I've got the 12-foot cavalry that go with that using the Fire and Fury rule system. They're painted, and I'm just gluing them onto their bases tonight. And so then it'll just be to finish up that basing, and they're done. And then whatever day it was, Saturday, whenever it was muddy, the other thing I did was started their horse holders. So I've got the two guys, and 6 horses because you're supposed to put a guy and 2 or 3 horses on a 1.5 round. I'm just using like a fender washer, and they will fit on there. So I just have got them primed and put on my sticks, tongue depressors, and I've got the guys are ready to be highlighted and started on 2 of the horses. So then that'll be all the horse holders I need for the amount of cavalry I've done.
So how many?
Yeah.
So how many horse holders per?
I forget what the exact number is, but basically on my 8 stands, I needed 2 horse holders and 6 bases. So that's your 6, 7, 8. 6 cavalry or 6 foot cavalry that are the same, use the same size bases as it's a 3/4 by 1 inch. Only you put 2 guys on it instead of 3.
Yeah.
And so I'll put a little more scenic stuff on the base and kind of space them around differently to make it interesting. So yeah, so 8 stands of mounted equates to 6 foot and 2 horse holders.
Okay.
That's how the ratio works.
And
so
a horse holder, you're just putting them on a one horse.
Yeah, they recommend in the Fire and Fury rule book, I think they say 1.5 inch round base. Yeah. And I've got these, just they're fender washers, and they're just a tick over an inch and a half in diameter, which is perfect. So I found those in the local hardware store, and then I'll probably start painting up some more just infantry stands. Yeah, like that. I don't know if that whatever size you've got, but the 1.5 inch is perfect for horse holders and mounted generals that like brigade or larger type general. And then I'll return to I may paint a couple of casualties for disrupted markers or whatever they call it, and then I'll probably try to get a couple more regiments of infantry done, just because I've got everything else I need in plenty, except I'll need to paint like three stands of leader figures that I'm still kind of saving on that, but I'll probably jump back into some just infantry to get my stand numbers up, and that's basically what I've done in the last 2 weeks. 1.25 inches. And you know, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going by what the Fire and Fury rules had, and I think it says 1.5 inches. They suggest, and then like 3/4 inch round for your, what do they call them, a brave colonel on foot. You put one. I'll probably do one of those or something when I'm doing my regiment. Just I'm not even sure exactly how they're used in the game, but they mentioned that, so I might just throw a couple of those on a base.
Yeah, usually there's a colonel per every brigade.
Yeah, okay.
General, something of that nature.
And I'm kind of organized in mine where I'll have basically the four regiments as a brigade, which I know Fire and Fury, they try to do ratios of what was actually at the battle. So if one regiment had 460 guys, that might be 16 stands or 12 stands or 8 stands, whatever. So they're all mix and match, but I'm just kind of building it to have some sort of just system while I'm doing it, so I'm not just randomly painting. But yeah, so that's me. That's what I got done.
Cool.
Still
How about you?
Still enjoying it.
How about you, Tim? What have you been up to?
Well, been having a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with the hobby been going on, so I haven't got much done. But I have been getting work on those hedges and stuff for the Waterloo.
Nice.
And
talking about that,
what I decided to do was put them on little bases.
Oh yeah.
You know, you just put all the clump foliage on there, and I don't want to just be grabbing it by the clump foliage all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That stuff's not on there very well. I mean, eventually just picking it up, you're gonna pull it off. So I just got some of that little balsa wood, real thin stuff, and I'm just gonna make little bases where I can, with some flock on them, so I can pick them up and move them around without pulling the stuff off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I'm going to be working on tonight. Just some nondescript little form. And I got finally got a whole bunch of my Normans primed, ready for some paint.
Cool.
So if I can get into that. What I do like about the gripping beast thing, that's what these Normans are. I like to add in these casualty figures.
Oh, I love casualty figures.
Yeah.
Like they're like this. And so you just paint them already laying on the ground. So
yeah,
I like that. I thought that was a clever little addition to the box set. So
that's great.
If I get all this stuff done, I'll probably start on those guys and get to work on those, and hopefully,
cool.
My hobby stuff will be able to ramp back up a bit. But right now, it's adult time. Have to put my big boy panties on. And
that's
get out
no
there
fun.
And get after it. Yeah.
As long as they don't ride up, you're good, right?
I hate having to be grown up.
Yeah. That's no good.
Yeah.
No, I'm assuming you don't have any time for Armada right now. You probably haven't had any games lately, right?
Oh no, we finished one up last Saturday. Oh, it's so
nice.
much fun. It's so much fun. I love
What'd you
that
play?
game.
What game?
Armada.
Oh,
Armada.
yeah, you said you were digging that. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. It's kind of like a real fun addiction. You know, you just put that stuff out on the table. It's already painted. You know, it's like let's let this rip.
It's a nice game. It's very fun.
Yeah. And I do like the way those orders things are, where you've got to do that in advance, and it just, to me, that's
cool. I know why more games can't work that in.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot since I've been playing Armada. Because one of the things about our games is like what I call it, it's like that a view from above, where we see all, know all.
Yeah.
And we're making adjustments with an awful lot of additional information.
Yeah.
Yes.
True.
And we're able to respond in time. It's one thing to have the information, but it's different if you can't respond immediately in some sort of unrealistic time frame.
Yeah.
And the one thing I like about that with Armada is that you have to plan all that out. You have to start thinking, okay, in this turn, I got to watch it. If I go too fast, I won't be able to make the turn, and my ship will run right off the table. Oh, sorry, boys. I just like that. But there's got to be some way to put that kind of delay in, instead of like in Hail Caesar and a lot of games where you issue orders and they're either made or they're not made. A lot of times that kind of bogs the game down a bit, you know, where you have a whole division that, you know, just because bad dice rolling, it sits there in the entire game and does nothing, or just gets wiped out because it's not been able to maneuver or anything. But the idea of that delayed response, it's almost like they build that in because you're having to do things in advance. I can't correct things in
real time. Yeah.
How much?
I'm correcting it in real time, where I'm not having to wait to, you know, get the message to them. Okay, now you need to do this thing now that this hasn't worked, and you know, and kind of plan things out in advance that way. So I don't know. There's got to be a way, and I'm sure that others have thought about this and worked on it, to where it would, like with naval ships, sailing ships, or any ships actually, for that matter,
Yeah,
could
you can't
utilize
stop
this.
on a dime. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
you got
game
to
that
play that.
the game that X-Wing was there before X-Wing, the one Wings of War or something, like the ones with the
Wings
World
of
War
Glory.
II and Wings of Glory with the World War One. I haven't played it, but as I understand it, they have a system where you put cards down. You have to pick your cards in advance of which way the plane's even going, and like you have to put on a flight pattern, essentially in advance. And so the one difference though is that in Armada, it doesn't restrict where you decide to move your ship. It just restricts the kind of strategic focuses that you're having, right? Like, whether it's going to be like, using all your guns blazing, or whether it's going to be, investing in squadrons in that particular round, or whether it's going to be that. This one actually has your movement affected in advance. So it's the same idea, but it's just happening with a different aspect of the game, I guess.
Right. Yeah, the one thing that's really cool about that Armada is that, there's, with certain ships, you can't begin to turn until you've gone so far. And
yeah.
Not like you have the option of not moving. You have, if you're going to do that, you have to plan not moving into your orders.
Yeah.
By using whether it's
reducing your speed down.
Either reducing your speed down to 0 or down to 1 and stuff like that. You have to plan that out. So you're all the time kind of thinking ahead of what, do I want to reduce my speed, increase my speed, and you got
to be thinking ahead. Yeah,
and then again, you can overthink it, which I have done on many occasions, and thought about being, I'm going to be crafty here, and not realizing that my opponent, they're trying to be crafty too.
Yeah. There was a game I was playing with my brother this last winter, and I can't remember what it's called anymore, but it's a board game, spaceship combat board game. Same thing, where you plan, you can only change your speed by a certain amount each turn, and then there's other things you can do too, but you plan that ahead, and so you're trying to pull a quick one on them, but they're also doing something else. But it's pretty cool, the interaction.
Oh yeah, and I just really enjoy that, and I don't know, the whole idea of doing that. Well, didn't we talk about a little bit last time about aid to camps and stuff like that in games?
Yeah.
I mean, they could play that similar role in that delayed response to changing conditions on the field. I was thinking that maybe like Hail Caesar, we could do it like where they move like commanders move, but they don't get the benefit of being able automatically to seek shelter within a unit like a commander can when enemy troops advance towards them. Perhaps they're stuck out there in the open and stuff, so because they got a mission to accomplish. I don't know. There's some way to do it. I just haven't figured it out in my head yet. But I think it's going to revolve around aid to camps. I was thinking about that the other day. But that's basically what I've been up to. I'm trying to really get a start on all these. I told my friend, don't bother buying the hedges and stuff. I have plenty.
Good deal.
After I put both of those sets together, it's like, I got way too many.
Oh, you always think you do though until you start laying them out. Like, I know even the bolt action games, I think I got 40 miles of road or river or hedges, and by the time you start squaring stuff up, it's like we used 4 foot and I just made one little field.
Yeah, it's the same way with when we were doing the Gaslands, the car racing thing that we was doing a couple, like 3-4 years ago. And I made all kinds of guardrails, and I thought, man, I have so much guardrail. I'll never use all this, and I laid it down to make a track, and it's like, where did it all go? I need more.
Yeah, it's funny how that is. You're right.
How many turns you have? You only write for Armada. It's only one turn in advance, right?
No,
it depends on the ship. Depends on the ship.
It depends on the ship. Like your capital ships do 3.
Okay.
Like I have like some small ships. They only have 1 that you can.
It's been a long time since I played it, so it's.
Yeah, and then
I think there are even some that have 2. Yeah, it depends on the ship.
Yeah, there's some that have 2, and then
Star Destroyers
have
3.
3.
In the
like your light cruisers and stuff like that normally have 2. But it's really a lot of fun. I
asked
really
about it
on that for a while.
I was wondering if you were still able to get some games in, so that's good. Well, gaming wise for me, I've been doing a fair bit of gaming. I had a DBA game this week. I forget, the guy that I play with has been doing DBA, as I mentioned, for like at least 30 years. And there's a language, I guess, within the community DBA. When you're playing a lot of games, it's like they call that like how much you win by or lose by, whether it's like a 4-3 or a 4-2. Like I won a 4-1, like meaning they only took 1 of my units and I took 4 of theirs. Like it's sort of like that language. I had a really close game. It was like a 4-3 where he took 4 of mine, I took 3 of his. It was like round down to the last second, like basically what it came out, cool. The last round. And it was really a lot of fun. I always liked that game. Had a lot of fun with that.
What army are you playing?
I've been playing my East Indian army that I painted, and I've been still using that one almost exclusively lately, just learning the game and just constantly playing that one. And that was fun. And I joined that Old World Escalation League, which even though all my stuff's painted for this, it's been fun to just go down twice a month to this Warhammer Fantasy Old World Club and play these games with folks getting into it. And actually a lot of experienced folks are there too. So it's been fun. And I've been shaking the rust off because I had like 3 or 4 months. I actually had a fair bit of time almost since I played with you guys where I hadn't had many games. I only had maybe 1 or 2 games after I played with you guys. And then, so I really needed to shake the rust off because I find that I can play a game for a year. And if it's got enough rules in the game, after 3 or 4 months, I forget the most basic things sometimes.
Not the only one.
Yeah.
Join the club.
Yeah.
You only get harder as you get older. And
I have to say, like, I enjoy Old World right now. It's probably like my favorite game. I actually have some other games, French Indian War, that I put up there as favorites too. But I actually really consider it to be like my main game right now. And so I'm enjoying it a lot. And so doing that every other week, it goes quick. It's kind of like this, it's always on the horizon. It comes pretty quick. And so then I also played, I actually played 2 games since our last show of Drop Fleet Commander, the spaceship game. Speaking of Armada, there's another spaceship game. And the guy that I'm playing that one with is really knowledgeable. He actually was the rep for the game when the first Kickstarter happened because they're in the 2nd edition now.
No way.
And so he was a rep for the game in the local area, and he has all this free swag. So he like gave me and one of my gaming buddies like faction specific dice, like in things that he's had like for years and stuff, which is kind of nice. But I had a good game with that. It was kind of it was interesting because I guess one of the first things you learn in Drop Fleet is that it's not about just blowing up the other guy's ships. Like you actually have to get troops onto planets. Like you're almost setting the stage for Drop Zone Commander, their other game. So like you're basically literally trying to drop troops onto planets, and that's the job of your ships. And so This is only my second game with him. By the way, Josh just joined in the room. Hey, Josh, thanks for joining.
Hey, Josh.
And so even though and Neil's here too. Hey, Neil.
Neil.
Even though that's the main job, like your scenario objective most of the time is getting these troops on planets, because I'm just learning the game. I just focused on blowing up his ships. He by the rules of the game and like the scenario, he beat me. He beat me in the game, but I actually took many more of his ships in the process than he took of mine. And that was sort of my focus, I guess. It's just because I'm just like learning the ships. I'm dealing with like 8 different types of ships, probably, and my force that I played. And that's not including like ones that are maybe even more than that, actually, now that I think of it. Maybe it's about 8, because there are some that are doubles and squads. But just learning all the differences and how to play the game, just getting like his ships blown up was a good enough objective for me.
Yeah,
and so that was fun. But that was still fun. I enjoyed that. I'm enjoying that game. As far as painting goes, I've been doing a little less painting. I'm working on some black works right now to paint and get my black works up to 20 strong from the 10 strong they are. And then I'm also doing 2 heroes. So I guess I'm doing 12 black works at the moment. So not a whole lot to show in particular with those. But I will say that one of the black work characters that I'm doing, it is not looking good right now because I'm just painting in the black and everything. But he's this big 3D printed orc. Yeah. So like the regular black orc is like this big.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's this like, really big black orc that I 3D printed. And it's a nice 3D print. And it was a free one, which was really cool.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, it was a free one. And he looks awesome. He really looks kind of awesome. And then I also have sort of like what he was back in the day. And that's the Grimgore Ironhide, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the actual GW one.
Yeah.
And so he's holding like a helmet. It looks like an Empire helmet almost. It looks like, I think. But he's holding like
not Bretonian.
Bretonian. Yeah, he's got like an Empire helmet in his face, skull in his hand. But I'm gonna use him as like a boss, like or like just like one level down from like the bigger boss. He's like he'll be like a regular boss. But yeah, when I'm not using, I most of the time use a Blackwork boss on Wyvern. And so these guys are like in my collection and I'm painting them alongside it, but I have to find a reason to not take the Wyvern, which I usually always take the Wyvern.
Yeah.
It's like, they're just too good.
Not. Yeah.
And so
it's a nice beat stick.
Well, they cause terror, like, like they fly, like they're just
the
like
mobility
in your face really fast, and they're great. And then, you put the guy on top of them with all this.
The model's
stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it is. It's a good one, right?
Yeah.
They sort of forget what that terror thing is when you play undead all the time.
That's true. I guess that's true. When I'm not always playing undead, so it does matter sometimes. Only other thing I guess I would say is I don't know if since the last show, but I think I put up that Foot of Gork and that I don't have it right in front of me here, but I finished that since the last time we had a show.
Cool.
Yeah, and so that's mostly it for me. For the drink tonight, I'm having Alberta Premium Whiskey. And so
I keep forgetting to go look for that.
Yeah, Rusty and I were chatting about this offline when I picked this up. It's a Canadian rye, and it's not bad. I mean, it's. I told him it's a bit of a cowboy drink, because like I find like Wiser's, which is another Canadian company I like, but the deluxe is kind of smooth and nice, but the regular stuff is kind of like this. So this would be like the bottom shelf Wiser's in my mind, and it's got that when you're drinking it neat, it's almost like you're coming in on your horse into like a dusty saloon. It's like it's not smooth at all. Like it's not like incredibly smooth.
Your cheapest rat gets you.
Yeah. And so like I'm enjoying it, but I'll tell you that 40 Creek that I had the other time, that's another Canadian. It's like not a bourbon, but it tastes kind of like a bourbon, because you're only allowed to call it a bourbon if it's from Tennessee, Kentucky. anyways, it has that kind of bourbon flavor. It's a little bit nicer to drink neat than this. It's not as much Cowboy Dusty Saloon as this, but
That's funny.
yeah. And so I guess that's kind of, so that's it for me. And yeah. Well, why don't we quickly go through the comments real quick before we do our topics? Start on our first topic. Let's see here. We've got going to the top here. Let's quickly go here. Curtis says, I've been playing Dead Zone and tried Void Admiral for the first times as well last night. Good fun. I've heard of the game Void Admiral, but I don't know that I can place it. Who makes that one? I'm trying to remember. That's not. Is that Mantic?
I don't recognize that.
It's not. Yeah, so that would be interesting to know. That sounds like kind of similar to what we were just talking about, like both the Armada and the Drop Fleet. And Chris says they went big, bada boom. I think he's talking about Rusty's update with the mechs, if I remember correct. Chris says, I'm working on Buford's 2 Cav brigades for day 1. Hopefully we'll be done for July 1st.
Cool.
Nice.
Well done.
Perfect time.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's perfect timing.
He's talking about thongs as well. I'm not sure what that was in reference to.
Get your panties in a bunch.
Oh, there you go. Okay, plotted movement is great. Oh, yeah, that's when we were talking about the discussion Tim had, just about the plotted movement, plotted actions, things like that. I love that in full thrust, plotting speed and direction.
Oh, yeah. I used to play full thrust all the time. It's like you had to write everything down what you're doing in advance.
Yeah.
Some people hated it. And it's like, it is what it is. It's part of the rules.
Yeah.
Josh joined in. Chris says, I picked up Void Admiral because of Kurt. Lots of laugh. It's old school Battlefleet Gothic mostly. Cool. Okay.
Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
And Neil says, C. Palmer embracing the Tash. Just needs a flat cap and a pipe for the full look.
That is Musty.
I had it for a bit, and I actually last fall I shaved it off. I had it when we had our game right over at Rusty's, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I shaved it off because I got like really sick. I told you guys all about that, like for 6 weeks, and I just ended up shaving it off during that time. But I ended up deciding I really liked it, and I grew it back. So, yes, Palmer 2.0, 2.1 now, I guess. So. Definitely Cowboy Rye, lots of laughs. Chris would know, he's in Canada, so he's probably familiar with some of these brands that I've been rattling off. Although, there are some Canadian whiskeys that people in the US are very familiar with, like Crown Royal and
oh, yeah.
You bet. Yeah.
certain stuff like that are big brands there. So, yeah. All right. Well, we've got 2 pretty interesting topics tonight, and the first one you could really take in any direction you want, but in light of the tariffs, that's kind of I think maybe a way to talk about it. But even when we were chatting about this as a topic, I'd kind of said, like, if you remember, for those of you, like that are Musty in the room that have been like playing games for many years, or played games when they were kids, and like there weren't as many things where you absolutely didn't play as much. So like maybe you played a lot of D&D, maybe you played a lot of BattleTech, but like that was kind of it. And you didn't really, maybe have like a ton of stuff that you were just like looking at constantly, like reading new rule sets every week and stuff like that. That might have been one experience of not having as many games in your life. Whereas now, there is a lot of talk. There's been releases from both Catalyst games. There's been Cool Many or Not, like big on the board games. And I guess Song of Ice and Fire, they do. They're talking about not being able to do as much. They're laying off lots of staff, like because of the tariffs. And so there's just like, presumably, both companies have kind of said, like, you are going to see an impact of less stuff coming out. In an environment where we have as much stuff coming out as we have now, and then like maybe we have less, like, I don't know how much less, but let's say we just have less, like in the future, that could be a different reason to be playing less games than maybe a long time ago when there were less games, like hypothetically. what is it like in your guys' opinion? How does it affect the quality of your experience, the quality of the products, the quality of the rule writing, like all of that stuff in your guys' opinion, if there's less stuff available? And so you could take this a lot of different ways. There could be a lot of different opinions on this, but I just thought it might be an interesting topic. So not sure if somebody would like to take a stab at it.
Well, I imagine Tim and I, the old geezers in the house. Remember the days when, back in the lore of ancient years, when you had to walk through the desert on all fours to reach the mecca of a single board game or miniature game.
Did you have lungs at this point, or were they amphibious like gills?
Well, this is just slightly after we crawled out of the swamp. We were tiny amoeba.
Very beginnings of life.
It's like so spoiled today when it comes to sensory overload when it comes to gaming. That when now you're hearing about, it's like Catalyst, for example, you said they're laying people off, they're going to cut back because they can't bring product in. Literally, they can't bring the product get it off the docks because they can't afford it right now. You go back to the early days where a board game was produced in country because you'd have the ability to print the counters here. Any reputable printing company that could do such things for you. We didn't have these fancy plastic miniatures and models and stuff that were in games like you have today. That industry was not here. It didn't exist. If you wanted miniatures, they were metal, and it'd be equivalent of like Ralph Partha making it, or the multiple numbers of companies that, like Alliance Miniatures, which was here in Des Moines, that did 15 mil Napoleonics and Civil War, that kind of stuff. Then there was other companies, but that was it. You didn't have this stuff that you got today. So, and the number of games that you have back then were kind of limited. And a lot of it was kind of sort of self-published. It wasn't the fancy rule books that you have today either. I'll just leave it at that for the moment. What do you think, Tim?
Well, to be honest, my gaming experience as a whole is fairly narrow compared to yours, Rusty. One, I was late getting into it. Like I was close to 30 before I really started playing a lot of war games, tabletop games. Up to that point, I'd played a few board games, even dabbled in a little D&D at times, but nothing consistent and where I would say I was a player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was more of a dabbler at things. Like if I was at a party and they needed somebody to sit in and whip up a quick character and play, and that'd be it. Wouldn't touch it again for God knows how long. But you're right. We live in an era now where games production, the writing, the availability, the ability to go on to what's the website where you can download your rules?
Drive through RPG.
RPG.
Wargamers Vault.
And
yes, Wargames Vault and all that. Yeah.
Wargames Vault and RPG.
Right. All that stuff is just made. It's almost like there's too many. We're getting to the point where there's so many that it's almost an art form of restraint. Because I've got a shelf full of different rule books and different time periods and stuff. But have I ever played them? No. I like to read them, like to see what people think or what their train of thought is. But there's a lot of them I'll never play. I'd like to, but just the availability of players and stuff. And then say you have like a large group that games. Well, if it's broken off into, you got 4 guys playing this, you got a few guys over here playing this game, and then you got these guys over here, and there's no crossover. Then basically what you've got is 3 very small groups just occupying the same space because they like this version. It's like you'd have like the DBA players of historical stuff. You'd have the Hail Caesar players of historical stuff. Throw in Midgard or whatever new flavors coming down the pike. So basically, you could have everybody liking the same sort of genre, but broken off into different groups. So it's almost like we've got more, but we're smaller, where we're divided up.
Yeah.
And then if you talk about like the difference between fantasy, historical, then you got oh gosh, man, I am my brain is just not working. Kind of like an RPG. What do they call that? Where it's kind of like an RPG, but it's historical, where you take a character and whatever. Kind of small scale skirmish games that are very themed around particular characters and stuff. It's a great time. And then you think about all the miniatures and how great they are. Yeah. And just in the numbers that you can go to. What I think will happen in the future, if this sort of economic situation continues, is that the companies that are big right now and they have the ability to survive this, they're going to be bigger at the end of this.
Yeah.
Because the smaller companies are going to fade out. Their quality products that they produced, if they're really quality, will be absorbed by the bigger companies. They will take over the license of whatever these manufacturers had. And the big will get bigger. The small will be forced out. And there'll be a slight readjustment, maybe a downsizing of the number of model makers and sellers. But then again, you have 3D printing, which takes out the middleman, per se. You got the guy that writes the little program that goes into the 3D printer and stuff that prints the model. But yeah. I think it's a great time to be a gamer, but it's also one of those, have we went past the point where we have so much that we have too much? It's almost like everything. It used to be a very narrow mountain to climb, Now it's this large plain of stuff out there that it's just full. It's like one of Dan's fields full of crops growing out there. You can just wade out into the field, and no matter which direction we turn, we can pick something up and have a new rule system in our hand.
And here comes the massive deratio that's gonna.
Yeah.
I equate this to remember the .com bubble? We had so many small little companies doing things, and all of a sudden the .com bubble hit, and
Yep.
they just all disappeared, and then they got what was swallowed up by the bigger ones.
Yep. I'm afraid that's what's going to happen in the gaming industry because it's part of the economy, and it's going to be subject to the same rules of economics as any other business. And so like Warlord, probably Gripping Beast, Victrix, who are some of the bigger players in
Perry Brothers and
the Perry Brothers. I don't know how much they would be interested in taking on someone else's line.
Probably not. No. Oh, okay. I didn't know where you were going with that.
I'm talking about maybe more of a retail, wholesale type situation who's going to be out there looking for that product. Like, instead of this product competing with ours, we're just going to buy that product. That company that had it will go out of business, and we're going to put it into our line, and then therefore we're not going to compete with it. We're just going to sell it ourselves.
Yeah, they're already doing that. I mean, Warlord's been picking up, and Gripping Beasts, they've all been picking up, which is great, so that you don't lose.
Some of those places, they make great stuff.
Yeah,
it's just but if you're just maybe one or two people, and
usually they're kind of retiring or whatever. They've been doing it for years, and nobody wants to just independently take it on, but some of these other companies are glad to add it to their portfolio of miniatures or games. So that's all good. I don't think it's most of the ones I've seen isn't like they're getting at least previously to this time period, they weren't getting rid of them because they were not making money anymore. It was more that they were going to go a different direction, or their retirement age, or they wanted time to do something else. And so these other companies picking up their lines was more of like almost a service to the community, as opposed to we're picking the bones of the dead.
True.
At least the ones I can think of offhand, but.
Well, and what's great about this community is that you can obviously see that even the people that run these other companies, that at some point in time, they've probably had those miniatures in their own collection. And they may not want to see that line disappear.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of nice. But in this economic climate, I think we'll probably see a lot more feasting on the bones.
Yeah.
Just and not out of cruelty, really, but that's just the way,
opportunity.
Just the way the world. And if I was going to not be able to make it, but I had this really cool line of stuff, and a bigger company said, we're going to take that, we're going to make it our own, and we're going to sell it, I think I would be happier that way than watching it just wind up in a landfill somewhere. So
sure, yeah.
But I'm afraid, though, that there's going to be a lot of that, and it will be sad, but it'll probably be necessary to save some of the stuff that we really, really enjoy. And,
so do we think we're going to possibly see it, what we're used to kind of fall back a bit, maybe 10 years? Because you go look back about 10, 15 years ago was the big explosion of a lot of board games and different kinds of games where stuff was being made in China and started showing up on the market. You think that's going to push us back a bit before we're going to see a resurgence later on?
Well, if their economic theory holds true, then those games should be published here in the States, printed
or North America.
in North America.
Yeah, it could be Canada, it could be Mexico, maybe. Yeah, so
I don't want to say anything about the 51st state of the union, but you know.
Well,
teasing, Palmer. I'm teasing.
But you know, and I'm kind of halfway in between because I'm U.S. born, but you know, like, I guess that's, yeah, like, I definitely see how, when talking about like what the quality is going to be like if there's scarcity, you know, of games, whether it be because they just don't exist like in the past, or whether it be because they're no longer available. I definitely can understand and see the argument, and I'm all for this idea that having more doesn't mean your hobby's better. Like, meaning, you know, like we've talked about this concept of core games on the channel. We talked about not chasing after, like a kid in the candy store, every single thing that comes out, thinking that it's going to be the ultimate game, and then it's not, and you've bought 50 games later. That's what happens. Like, you know, there is no perfect game, you know. And so we get tired of everything. It's easy to have fear of missing out, you know, and from all that stuff. And so, you know, like my best times in gaming were around 1 or 2 games, you know, and so like I can totally see that argument. From speaking of economics, like what I would say is that I would argue that the games that we have today are better for having been made in a climate where there are more games being made, kind of like a capitalism idea, in that the more games that are being made, the more people that are making them, the more people that are seeing other people make them, the more people that are competing, learning, trying to be a better game designer, the bigger the industry that is making more games and offering more jobs to game makers is ultimately, in my opinion, should be making better games.
Right.
And so from that perspective, looking at it from that perspective, I would say that I think it's not as good, like to actually not have an environment if you like, you know, innovation in your games over the years, to have less games being made. I think it's like always a good thing when your industry is bigger, and we already are niche kind of in the sense that, like, you know, people can play video games. I don't know how it's going to affect the video game market, but arguably speaking, if you know, if it's you might be able to have access to video games easier than physical products that are being manufactured. I'm not really sure. Maybe not. You still have to, you know, I don't know whether it'll be downloaded or what. But so from that perspective, I think it's kind of perhaps a negative. But I don't disagree with the comments. Hey, Cody, GM Cody. Hey. So I don't disagree with the comments. Like, I think that they're all pertinent, and like, yeah, I've listened to a lot of people talk about the response to this, and there have been people that have brought up the idea that this could be an opportunity for bigger players to grab up portions of the market share, you know, and like buy up, like you guys were saying, like other companies and stuff. So that's a component of it, you know. And so, yeah, so it's interesting. It has a lot of different facets. You know, I don't think, like, in reality, for me, that it's all kind of like what you also are used to. And, you know, like for me, when I was used to having like less games and playing less games and being more like really into the one, like, then I wasn't probably any like more or less happier than I am now. But like, when you know that, like, maybe you could actually see innovations and like new kinds of games come out that you really like, and when you know that that's possible, like, it's maybe natural to maybe want that, like, you know, like just to you know, desire like cool games to come out. Like, you know, I'll just throw out a game because I'm not playing it, but it seems like a lot of other people, it's really blown up, but it's that old Trench Crusade. So like, I've not played it. Yeah. I'm not planning on playing it. So I'm not saying this because I have like a personal interest involved, but like so it's this like new game that's come out like in the last I guess there was a Kickstarter, but in the last year or two, this concept has come out, and it's like apparently at Gen Con, like I've heard people say that Trench Crusade, it was like Trench Crusade Con, like it was just huge, the amount of interest there, and like is what I had heard. And that's a new game, right? And a lot of people are happy. It's like, for many people, it's probably revitalizing their interests and the hobby in some way, which, as somebody that's not playing it, I still think that's really good. Like I still think that I will probably benefit from some game in the future that I will get into that will be related. And I'll give you an example of that, is that I'm looking at playing Silver Bayonet. I've never played that game that was so popular that author did. The one that is, I think his name is McCullough or something like that. That did, but it's the one with the wizard that's like Mordheim that everybody plays. It like you can make your own band, and it's a wizard. Frostgrave, like Frostgrave.
Yeah, Frostgrave.
It's like such a big, like there's so much there, right? Like it's been going on for so long. I've never played it, but now I'm playing Silver Bayonet, and it's a game that several games after that author did that. But if he didn't have the opportunity to do Frostgrave, would I be playing Silver Bayonet, or would it even be the same game that I'm playing, that I'm going to be playing, like we benefit from like all of these games that even if we don't play them, if we play them in the games in the future, they're all like connected, right? Like as far as like these game designers are hired and like they get experience, and like like the industry is more competitive in that they're trying to make really good games, and stuff. And so I don't know, that was my sort of take on, how quality could be affected.
Yeah.
I don't know. Dan, what is your thought?
Yeah, I would agree with most of what everybody said. I don't think you can have too many games. I mean, the only sense that I think that you can have that, it would just be from a strictly selfish standpoint of like, well, now whatever, either my friend or my small friend group or our hobby shop we meet at or whatever, they've switched to a different game, so you kind of lose your player base for your personal maybe favorite. But big picture, more is better for the hobby. It brings people in that, a game, like you said, excuse me, whether it's Trench Crusade or any of those. I mean, I can't even think of them all. There's all kinds of this different skirmish games. There's everything from fantasy to science fiction to robots to race cars to, I mean, just pick your anything. I mean, it's fabulous. So there's some people that would never, touch World War II or historical or fantasy, but they're huge into battle tech or and I just think that the broader that you can make the hobby, the better. That's nothing but good, because something different trips different people's triggers, right? And and now I think one of the things that's helped the gaming industry in all these small, whether they're making miniatures or rule sets, is obviously the internet. Because that's what I think when things really took off, because you can have a small niche game or a small niche company, but you can your reach is worldwide. I mean, you can be in almost anybody's living room now through the internet, obviously. So your products can get out there. You can get exposure. You get some YouTube exposure or whatever, Facebook or whatever people use, and so I think more is definitely better. The big thing, it's kind of a two-part question you had as far as is more better. Was it better back in the old day? And I always try to be careful about remembering the old days, because I was a different person then, and my interests were different and the world was different. And, we've talked about it before. The way you'd find out about a new game was because for me, it was like I had a subscription to Dragon magazine. And so I would find out about new miniature companies, and you'd send a self-addressed stamped envelope off and wait for their little photocopied catalog to come. And I was happy with that, and all I knew about was the handful of games out there, and so that then you played what was out there. If you were interested in miniatures and painting and terrain and all that, but now you can do sailboats, a million different scales. You can do World War I ships, different scales. You could do, it's just anything, and that's fantastic. The other part of the question, as far as the effect of tariffs, of course, at the end of the day, as we've seen, we've got no direction with the plan right now. So when I say me, I mean not me, but as far as where the tariffs, I mean, maybe they stick around and maybe they don't. So, my hope is that they don't stick around very long, because people don't want to tolerate that. And then, because what it will do, like you said, it will crush the smaller guys quicker. And I know one of the companies I follow in particular is Flying Frog Productions, which they're essentially board gamers, but they've done this game Shadows of Brimstone, which I have, and it's a miniatures game. It's basically it's a dungeon crawl. It's what is that? Why can I not think of the dungeon crawl that GW did? Hero Quest. It's based on Hero Quest, only it's in a different genre, and they do all their plastic miniatures and all their own sculpting, and it's all done on it's two brothers and a handful of staff, but all their stuff is done in China, and they're in the middle of a Kickstarter right now that is trying to deliver. It's going to be crushing for somebody like a business like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Kickstarters,
Kickstarters are going to get killed.
Two Kickstarters that are coming in, and I had to pay one of them $30 and the other one $35.
Okay.
So I can get them.
Yeah.
And that's how much it's affecting us right now.
Yeah. So I think it remains to be seen if they do stay in place, and if they get adjusted and shifted and put on and pulled off, because if you follow that stuff, it's been just a whirlwind of whatever. But if they do, it will be, like you said, I think there'll be maybe some opportunities. Then these people will be looking for ways out, and some of these larger companies that can weather the storm, as is economics, will probably be able to pick some of these things up, or it'll be lost, to time and eternity, or perhaps those same individuals can, shift to doing something else for 1 or 3 or 4, whatever years, and then can come back to it if they're financially stable enough to be able to put that on the side for now,
and even want to at that point,
or even want to, because you'll have to come back to some amount of stability again. As even Wall Street has shown, they're just trying to see where the things settle out. Businesses can function. They just need to know what are the rules now. But I think that's going to be tough.
And I think that some of the points that were brought up, I think Tim brought up the idea of not, it is true that gaming groups struggle when there's like fractionization, I think is a really good point. I think that's a negative of
just
kind
on
of
a personal
both fear
level,
missing out and the distraction in the community with games. But then also, and I like anybody that plays any significant number of games deals with that. I actually, and I mean, it's deals with it in a way where it's annoying, and it's like, it is an issue. I actually deal with that. Constantly have people buying games that get me into buying games that never turn into anything. Even ones that I'll paint and then, we never play because another thing's come out and then something else.
Or finding opponents just for a game you want to play, period. Yeah.
And then and fear of missing out too is an issue, it's just,
it's
real. It's hard. It requires a lot of discipline to see stuff that you really think is cool and not get it. Just because you have that psychologically that looks cooler than what you have on your desk because you don't have it. That's the main thing.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I do think there are negatives of that we experience of having too much, but I also think there are positives, in having a big industry. So.
Yeah, and a big industry is in general is healthy, and it gives you more choice. And if it's not viable, just the way economics works, then it won't be viable. But that's just how it works. but I always see it as that means things are healthy. These people wouldn't produce this if they didn't either have the passion for it and or see there's a way to make some money doing it. So
Yeah.
Which is all good.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm not trying to give the people in the chat room and us a big pat on the back, but I will say I am happy that we can talk about something that's fairly political like this and it didn't devolve. Because I've seen it's happen even within our own community. Like I've seen like videos and stuff where it's like devolving and in some cases I'm not even talking about just the politics. Like it is just a reality. Like when you have game scarcity, there's like kind of like this topic of like, what is that going to mean for us? Like regardless of what that is, like what the reasons are, right. And so it's cool that we can kind of, so maybe I'm just skimming through here and I haven't seen anything like that. And so that's kind of why I say that, but maybe I should just quickly do the topics, the comments related to this, like just kind of see what folks are saying. So we'll just start from where we left off. The foot of Gork is so cool, Palmer. Do you know if it is the same size as the old 4th edition template? I don't know that. That's a good point. I do know that there are some 3D prints of the 4th edition template that people use, or maybe even 6th edition template, that people will print sometimes a flat foot that matches that. So you could use that like for the spells of the old editions. I should actually just do that. I actually printed off a foot, one of those for somebody as a gift, and so I could have actually done that. I wish I known because I actually, but I could have put it on there and just seen. But yeah, thank you. I did actually. I guess I didn't tell you guys, but the result of my game. But that foot that I 3D printed, although I lost a game to. Oh no, I told you guys in the comments, but I did actually go against Bretonians, and I in that 1,000-point game. And although I lost, it was really close. And one of the things that I loved was that foot. In one round, that foot went through 10 knights and took out 4. And one round just went right through and crushed 4 knights.
That's a lot of painting, Palmer, that you just crushed.
Well, and also all that 3D printing and painting I did to make it together actually did something. What I said to the guy during the game is I said, usually when I put a model on the table, I expect it to die the first time. Because anytime I paint something, it never does well. Like the first time I put it down, it never does well. So the fact that I put the foot of Gork down and it didn't kill my own guys, which is what I was expecting it to do.
Yeah, that's astounding.
A real plus. Yeah. Anyways, that was that. So
that's funny.
Chris says that Void Admiral is a self-publish. Okay. So that's something you have to look into. So self-publish meaning you'd still buy it, but it's basically like small scale publish that the author did it themselves. So they're like maybe it could be.
It's pretty much like my stuff.
Like Wargames Vault type purchase.
Okay.
Is that what they mean? Or what he's saying?
Okay.
So
Josh says less games equals you can finish all those projects that you started decades ago. That is one way to look at it for sure. Less fear of missing out, less needing to play new stuff.
Returning to the good old days, as they say.
Neil says, I think a lot of companies are using the towers as an excuse to downsize. Okay, that's quite possible. And Chris says the U.S. is lucky Wargames Atlantic moved their main factory to the U.S.
Yeah, we're super lucky.
Yeah,
right. They are really cranking stuff out like every week.
I tell you what, are they not? They produce. It seems like every couple of weeks they've got something brand new,
and it's such a variety of things. It's like crazy.
Yes.
It's cool.
They're
likable.
I tell you what I really like about them is when they do those they do those sets of like special weapons or heads, or they just need those generic horses and stuff like that.
Did they do the zombie heads recently? The zombie heads? Or like those zombies that have, they come with like 10 different types of heads. So you could use the zombie in like Napoleonic, you could use it in fantasy, like you can use it in World War II because they have like all these different heads. I think that's the same company.
Could be. They always find a way because almost everything they put out, I get their newsletter on Fridays in the email box, and it's just funny because it's like, oh wow, yeah, you know what? There isn't really anybody doing exactly that, like in plastic or it's like kind of the rage right now. Of course, they're doing all that stuff for Baron's War, which is helpful, sort of partnering with that, but they're always doing something that's like, you know what, there aren't like 400 places already doing that, so it's kind of cool. I don't know how they find that stuff out, figured out.
I'm not going to skip down. I skipped down to see if somebody commented, but Chris said it's 70 heads in that set with the zombies. So there's like 70 heads in that set. Yeah, it's crazy. Neil says, my stash has a half-life of 500,000 years. So
I'd say my stash is greatly decreased in the last year since I started painting.
Palmer's stash is coming in right under his nose.
Since we're talking about stashes.
Yes. That's what he meant.
That's quite the mustache you have there, Palmer.
It's the only way I know how to grow it. I don't know how to grow it any other way.
A mustache. Well played.
We should all grow one.
There you go.
Just for fun. Come on, Rusty. You look good with a stand.
Rusty seems allergic to this idea. Not even November? Not even November?
No. I tried it once and it drove me nuts. The only reason I did grow a mustache once was because I was out in the field and I didn't have my razor.
No.
That's court martial right there.
That's one reason.
There was, sir, is that stuff growing on your face? And I was like, well, it's not interfering with my gas mask, so we're fine.
Well, there you go.
Chris says, some of my RPG publishing friends switched printing to Eastern Europe during COVID and kept it that way, which is lucky.
Yeah, a lot of stuff was coming out of Poland.
Yeah, I was seeing Poland. Yeah, same thing. Wasn't that where that V for Victory, that Muskets and Tomahawks company, I think that's where that was printed, was somewhere in Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Studio Tomahawk. Yeah.
Studio Tomahawk. Thank you. I was blanking.
Well, it's probably an economics thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that one's not coming back to the US.
Some countries did shut down.
So, I collect rule books because I enjoy seeing what other writers come up with, is what Chris says.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
me too.
How their mind works. What do they, how they skew their importance of different items in the game. Like everybody has like an attack characteristic, a defense characteristic, and stuff like that. But
yeah.
In some genre they have those. Every genre they have that. It's just how do they utilize their. I always find that fascinating because you kind of get a glimpse into how their mind works.
Yeah.
I like the eye candy. So many of the gosh darn rule books are so gorgeous, and then some of them have really cool scenarios, or if they're historical, they have like the Warlord games. All their black powder supplements have a beautiful section on the history of the period. Just about always, and all the painted minis. It gives me. That's where I got a lot of my painting ideas for my ACW, is just flipping through there and seeing stuff that I liked and kind of emulating it.
Yeah.
A lot of inspiration.
I just think way back in the day when the, what was the rule book, rule set for the 5th, went with D&D, the battle game.
Oh, battle system.
Yeah, when that rulebook came out with all the glossy stuff in it,
Yeah, I was like,
that
wow.
was like, oh my gosh. Because almost everything back in the day seemed like it was typed and then mimeographed off, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was.
And that was a rule book, was that
Yeah.
way.
So you're talking about the battle system rulebook?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a beautiful book. Yeah, absolutely.
And then Games Workshop started putting theirs out with all the nice pictures and stuff in it. Then it started. That's when you really started seeing an increase in capability of looks of books. Before it was really just like stuff, something typed up,
yeah,
and then it sent to a print machine. It's like, and it was all just that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something like hand drawn illustrations and stuff to represent movement of units and stuff.
Yeah.
It was drastically increased about that time.
Yeah, agreed.
Josh says, Dan's crop of hobby. I think he's referring to Tim's comment about it's like a field.
Oh, field, yeah. I
And
wish
then
I
it
could
says,
walk out to my field and it would be like miniatures growing or something.
Painted already. No.
Either way.
Either way. Josh says, good name for a game store, Dan's crop of hobby. Chris says, I think we will see Wargames Atlantic explode with what's going on, as we were saying. And then Josh says, Wargames Atlantic are a great example. All their products are in the U.S. People like cheap, and that's why a lot of manufacturing left North America.
Yep.
Simon, Josh says, could do the same, but I guess that might be down to shares and company profit goals, etc. My policy is to buy as much as I can in Japan to support my local stores, and if I buy models direct from the producer, to give them all the profit. So many great small cottage industry companies.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, if possible.
Yeah, we got GM Cody in the house, and then Chris says Simon, I think, is in for even more pain. That's what it seems like from their letter. 7 outstanding projects is going to kill Simon, I think, because like if you guys know the specifics, there are a number of Kickstarters into products that they now have to pay a tariff on that they actually didn't when they actually did that. So it's going to be they're laying off like 9 people out of 60, I think.
Pretty unfortunate. Not of their making, not bad business decisions.
Simon.
Cool Mini or not. Cool Mini or not. They do like the Zombicide, Song of Ice and Fire, like all that stuff.
Yeah, but they're one of the ones that have mass production of stuff coming out of China for all their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to
tear. Been doing it for years.
Catalyst is the same way.
Yeah.
They're another.
A lot of places are.
Well, and I just, I just got into their Cthulhu game. Where my family and I are playing that now instead of Zombicide. I shouldn't say instead of, but we have a copy at our house, and we're going to be playing a bit of that now. And I actually ended up buying the second season, the retail of the second season, knowing all this has happened. Even after only playing it once, like I just got the whole second season. So this way, it was already on sale, but I knew that there's a chance I may not see it again if it gets bought up. With all this stuff happening, it's not going to get reprinted as easily, or it's going to cost a lot more. So I just bought it for that reason.
Something I haven't noticed yet, which I probably should, is buy some more resin. But right now, I just looked today at the resin that's coming in. It's all made in China. Is still the same price.
Yeah.
Some places stocked up, when the buzz was happening a couple months ago. And,
they had the big problem when the fires in LA, everything jumped up. It was up to almost $100 for 3 kilograms.
Sounds like you're buying drugs.
Yeah.
Well, I just got some more really cheap resin
coming in.
I got a bunch of kilos stuff coming in, man. It's like you start sniff it, man.
Jeez, man, luckily we're not monetized because that would demon.
Josh says, and I agree that with Neil above that companies will use the tariffs to lay off employees, as controversial as that sounds.
Yeah, but they wouldn't lay them off unless they were already needing to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why you would do it just to do it.
I think a lot of companies are probably right on the verge right now,
Well, it's a
even
tough
before
industry.
these tariffs went in, because the market hasn't really been all that great.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
last 4 years.
Well, yeah, I know. It's just it's a fringe market and a fringe market, like we said, that's so diluted down.
Mhm.
And any little bump in the road is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I still think this
Realize.
is a .com bubble burst that's hitting us right now. This is
That's
getting,
how long it lasts. I'm still
Yeah.
waiting to see. I'm trying not to be doom and gloom until the reality is what it is.
another thing that's really I got my eyes on is Pakistan and India too. So
Yeah,
that,
they're getting jazzed up again. Yeah.
it's shooting the heck out of each other. So
Yeah.
that could cause some major issues. That shipping lanes could be problems. So,
When we were talking about Trench Crusade, GM Cody says that I'm building my trenches as we speak, and Chris says was painting a Sinner Eater last night. And I'm assuming that's or a Sin Eater. I'm assuming that's Trench Crusade because I don't know the game.
Yeah, I don't either. It
it'd
looks
be
cool,
like
but
a priest or something. Sounds like a.
So this looks like a post just about Trench Crusade. He's GM Cody saying, I finished a starter Heretic Force about a week ago, played 2 games online thus far, and I'm really enjoying it. We'll have everything for a face-to-face game in about a week. Cool. Nice.
did you see
I hear people like it. It's like
GM Cody's been doing some cool stuff about Warhammer Renaissance. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that rule set.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, it's a 4th and 5th edition combination that's been done by a guy. I wanted to say he's Danish, something in there. But anyway, he's worked on it for years and years, and it's pretty cool looking set. But anyway,
awesome.
If you're into that, check his videos out.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh too. Josh does them.
Yeah, I thought Josh was involved with it. I thought that you were about to say.
Yeah, Josh he put it on my radar. Really pretty cool.
So GM Cody says, praise Gork, dem Umis need a good crumpin. Yes, that's what they certainly got.
Time to time they must, yes.
So Chris says, awesome at GM Cody finishing the Pilgrims. I got Void off of Amazon, so I guess you can buy it off of Amazon. My favorite rule book.
Amazon.
Yeah. My favorite rule book back then was Star Wars mini game with all the color minis and art. Yeah. Now is that the Grenadier?
Grenadier.
That Grenadier.
You had a 50% chance on that, Palmer.
Yeah, exactly. Was that Grenadier's game? Because they had some really cool, like if you like the look of old minis, like the nostalgic look of heroic old metal minis from like early 80s, they had some cool Star Wars metal miniatures from Grenadier.
There we go.
There you got her.
Go.
Speaking of, go ahead, finish your statement.
No. I was going to go on the next comment. What's up?
Okay, I was just along those same lines where you talk about old school miniatures. I don't know if you guys have watched Oakbound Studios channel, but he's a guy in the UK and he does his own sculpting, his own miniature line. But what I was going to bring up is he's got a bunch of videos. I mean, there might be like 6 of them, maybe at least, where he spends like 15 minutes sharing his screen on the computer, but it covers miniature companies. Some are old ones that their models are still available through another vendor now or owner, but some of them are just real small sculptors, and there's some amazing stuff out there that are just really good old school metals. A lot of them are metal, some are resin, but it's worth watching his videos because he just goes through them and he scrolls through and shows, and it's always from usually a fantasy standpoint. But he just put out another one here this week that I just happened to catch. Anyway, old school minis, if you're into that stuff, there's stuff that I've never seen and I've done a lot of searching. So that's cool. My little for that.
I think Chris mentioned West End games for Star Wars, and I do see them here, but it looks like Grenadier had them as well. Grenader model Star Wars 2. And so I'm not sure which ones in particular that I was looking at. I'm probably thinking of the West End game ones, but I
West
do
End
see
Games is way back. Yeah,
That's way.
well. I'm looking at these Grenader models, and they're really old too for Star Wars. And it's the year. It looks like it's during the time of AD&D. Is what it says. Yeah, no, these are real old ones. So they both did them. In any case, there's some really cool ones, real way back in the day. We also have. I stopped back on my PLA and resin. Says Chris, Danish, and his name is Balder. I've played a lot of it. Regarding the Warhammer Renaissance.
Yeah, Josh has played a lot. He's got some excellent videos on his channel. They're fantastic.
He said he called him Swedish and he got a frosty response.
That's right. I remember him saying that. That's why I had to pause, but I thought I was right on Danish.
So West End Games, Star Wars.
Partial Dane myself. Hey.
And minis might have been Grenader. Maybe that's what it was, Chris. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was that Grenadier did the minis.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
But West End Games did the rules. That could be it.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I'm looking here, and it says it right here. It says Grenadier Models was the licensed manufacturer of miniatures for West End Games Star Wars, the role-playing game.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was the same, the miniatures. Yeah. I thought they were Grenadier. So we are... about 30 minutes left. Do you want to take a crack at? I don't think this one might be too long, but you guys want to take a crack at the second topic?
Yeah.
Sure. Fire away.
A little more oomph, fellas.
Bring it on. I was trying to remember what it was.
You're like, yeah, okay.
I can't remember what it was.
So
it's kind of linked.
It's a simple one. It's a simple one.
Yeah. Read it.
New editions of games.
Oh, yeah. How often?
Like in your guys' opinion, with the games that you play, my intro would be that some people don't like to ever see a new edition. They'd just rather play the same edition they always have. But then, depending on whether if it's an asymmetric game where there's like codices that are somewhat out of balance through the release of models and things that have happened, new editions can clean up that. They can take a shot at rebalancing. Also, sometimes it's to actually encourage a new player base or to continue to grow the player base. Yeah. And so there are many different reasons why a company may want to put out a second edition or an additional edition. And so given that, that happens, what do you guys think for the games that you play is sort of like a happy balance, or what do you like to see, even if it is no new additions?
I think it depends on how off, like if it is a game that requires codices, and I guess I'm thinking specifically like a bolt action, I think it depends a little bit, like how long did it take to get them all out there, as far as how often it needs to be done, because you hate to release a new edition like a year after you've kind of released the last army book.
Just like, let's say Games Workshop, where they start bringing out all the army books for fantasy and they don't even get through all of them.
Oh, they would never do that, Palmer. Or Rusty, I mean. That's not real.
Really? They don't? Okay.
No, that's just mean.
Yeah,
but as far as I like for bolt actions, one I'm thinking of in particular, it needed one in the sense that, because I think it was 26, it was 9 years between, and even though they hadn't, it's historical games, you don't introduce, they come up with some new units, but I mean, you can't invent them out of thin air. So it kind of was what it was. There was a little bit of rebalancing, but there's enough FAQs. I mean, the FAQ is humongous, so they could incorporate all, even if they changed none of the core rules, just to get the FAQs, the errata, any of those things worked in. I think that's helpful. A new edition also, if it waits long enough like that, can reinvigorate the player base, which is a positive. It might even put it on somebody else's radar because the buzz of this new edition coming out might be like, you know what, I've always been interested in bolt action. Maybe I'll jump in now, while it's, and then it maybe gets some new people to maybe used to play even to like, oh, let's try that again. So that part's good. You always are, at least I am wary of, does it change the game, which I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir with people in 40K and Warhammer Fantasy, because that game, well, at least Fantasy, I know, has changed dramatically through the editions. So, and then you can take other games that don't have army books, and maybe you need to update it occasionally to keep it relevant. Keeps it on people's radar. It's not a 15-year-old game, or and then maybe you do some tweaks, and and enough feedback and more plays, and maybe some tournament games and stuff that you find there's some things that do need tweaked to balance, or that there is a meta that like you never take those units or whatever because they just don't perform. So is there a way we can tweak things to make them to where people would want to play them? And then you always hate to think they do new editions just for money grabs, because then we can release 8,000 different codices or whatever, and new miniatures, and now you need to double the size of your units to make them playable, and which is all possible too. But even just from a game that I enjoy, bolt action, it was time for a new edition.
So if you say it's time for a new edition, what is sort of like a ideal range of time for you?
Well, and that's what's tricky. Like for that one, even I think they were coming out with what they call campaign books still fairly frequently, but they were like they weren't the army list. All the core armies and all the minor nations, all that stuff had been out, and I can't say for sure, but they hadn't released for second edition. Even they'd only released one second edition army book, and it was the German one. And so it wasn't like you owned already a bunch of the American Army book that actually is basically still the one you use is from 2012 maybe. I mean, it's ancient. so but I would say for bolt action that depending how long it takes them to get the core rules, all the lists are doing one each quarter, but I would say 6-7 years is not unreasonable.
Yeah. And that's actually, that would be 6-7 years would be for most games long, but that would be probably for people that really like the game, but then understand that it needs to be eventually done. That would be probably somewhat reasonable.
Just because every year they offered an FAQ and a thing. It usually came out like in, I think, February-ish or so, but I mean, it was getting fairly like crazy to like sort through it all, which didn't matter in friendly games, but like when I went to Bug Eater tournaments, it was like you kind of needed to figure all that stuff out a little bit, so you weren't totally caught off guard when you were going in facing things you never see with my, the guys I play with occasionally.
Well, Tim's disappeared for a second. What do you think, Rusty? What is your... Oh, there you are. Okay.
I thought maybe he passed out or...
Well, either one of you. What do you guys think?
Well, for me, I think 5 years is a nice round number for time frame that can be justifiable. Every 5 years, make a change.
And that for any game rule system, or you thinking of one specifically, or?
I think any. If a system is really dialed in, I don't see the need really, other than some FAQs every once in a while, and just something online that you can print off to say, hey, this is the changes needed. That we don't need completely convert something.
Yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, maybe.
Yeah, it's like that. To me, that's a reasonable amount of time. Now, something like that, you get some of these historical game systems, let's say Fire and Fear, I think it went 20 plus years in between changes. So it's not, can be a really long time. If they don't think there's a need to change it at all, then fine, they're not going to change it. But it's totally just ridiculous. You look at like Games Workshop for a while there, it seemed like every 3 years they're getting a new edition. It's like, that is just wrong on so many different levels. It's like, hey, I just finally figured out how to play my army and it's got a new edition. Okay, thanks.
Now it's not playable anymore.
Especially if you didn't jump in, right when it was released, and maybe, a few years in you jumped on, and then it's like literally, and you're maybe out of the loop and you find out there's a new edition coming out, and you're like,
hey, I just bought my army, got it all painted, I got my first game coming, and say, hey, you just realize that there's a new edition coming out next week.
Yeah, I remember I told you about the new Middle Earth rule book coming out. Remember?
Yeah, I was like, whoa, I'm not going to buy that rule book then.
Yeah.
Like, that can wait.
I could wait.
I'm in no hurry for that one. And then
so there's a new Middle Earth. There's a new Middle Earth that just based after doing the recent models, they're redoing the rules.
No, it came out last fall, right?
Last fall. That's the one.
December. Came out.
And that's the one that's probably coming with the set that you just bought.
Yes.
Yeah. But he talked to me during Harvest about what rule book, and I was like, I think you gotta wait. I think there's a new one coming out like soon.
Oh yeah.
So I did some little research, and it's like, well, we don't know when it's coming out, but there's a movie coming out at this date. So probably expected at that time. It's like, okay, I'm not buying.
Tim, what are your thoughts on how long?
Well, I agree with Rusty about 5 years, but the thing is, you guys just touched on the part I was going to bring up is how often do we play a game? Not often enough to where we really get a handle on it before it changes on us.
Yeah.
Say it's one of those games that, you go through a spell where there's just not that many people playing that game, but it's one game that you enjoy, and you do get a game in every once in a while to keep your interest up and to keep your enthusiasm. But yet, like Rusty said, I'm just now learning how to put this stuff together, to let it play in harmony with all the working parts. And now all of a sudden there's this new set of information. I think about 5 years, even as long as 7. If it's a good, solid rule set, but we have to take into consideration the different genres of games. Fantasy players are different mindset-wise. If there's all of us that play both, but fantasy players, they tend to like that. That new shiny thing coming all the time. I remember a friend used a term like when Warhammer Fantasy died out. He called it a dead game, and I said, "Well, how can it be dead when all the books still exist, all the miniatures still exist? It's not really dead." And his words were, if they're not supporting it and evolving it over time, then it's dead. And I tend to look at the community still enjoys the game, then I don't think it dies. It as long as people dust off the minis and play the game, and then it never really dies. Just two different trains of thought, but I'm more of the line of like, I've always been more of like a historical gamer, then, and my mindset tends to be along that it's okay, whatever, because a guy is a guy is a guy. We just over time we've just given him different weapons. You know,
Yeah.
my Roman legionnaire gets a musket, and then the musket turns into a rifled musket, and then it turns into a rifle, and then it, you know, but it's still a human. Where with fantasy games, and they're
giving them superhero abilities.
Yeah, and they really, it's such a slippery slope when you're starting to give buffs and debuffs to different units and different characters, and then, you know, this thing takes this thing away, but if I put this character in it, he gets this thing back plus.
Yeah.
You know, and it's,
well,
it almost gets to the point where just the
see you, Chris.
You almost look to change because you're hoping that the great change happens for you and not for some other rule book.
Yeah.
And it used to do that. If you were in Warhammer Fantasy long enough, you saw like every new book that came out was just a little bit more cheesy than the last one.
That's 40K.
And then by the time the last editions came out, it was Gouda, baby. Yeah. It was out for everybody. And,
well,
you know, everybody.
And actually within fantasy, you can see that dichotomy too, because when you were talking, I was thinking about it as you were talking, and you know, like Wordheim would be a game that is basically comes from Warhammer Fantasy, and you know, like in almost every way, you know, it comes from it. You know, it's inspired by it.
Yeah.
But it has lasted and is in some ways only grown. It's never, to my knowledge, had a new edition. Like they've released these town criers and like, you know, kind of information at times, like new factions and stuff, but it's never gotten like, you know, since its heyday, it's never gotten new sets, like a new edition, like a whole kind of thrust of support from the company. There are communities that look out for themselves. Like they're like, oh, this game's coming out. It's got Mordheim-esque miniatures. We're loving it. Like we're everybody running by it. You know what I mean? Like, and so we can play Mordheim. And so it's lived on without an edition. But what's so different between it then and Warhammer Fantasy? And, you know, probably a lot of things besides the scale too. But one of the things is the competitive aspect.
Right.
Even though there are people that play like at Gen Con, like Mordheim and stuff, how much does the tournament scene, kind of similar to what you're saying too, because you're talking about how like you can modify, there's so many things to modify in like different ways, like new books come out and like all this stuff. When you have a competitive scene for a game, does that affect the need to do a restart sometimes? Just due to the additions and the changes, and even sometimes the community breaking the game. You know, like sometimes you could argue the community didn't break it because it was there for them, but in some ways they kind of can too. Like they kind of just, you know, the meta finds the things, you know, like they never intended it to be that way, but they found it and, you know, use that combination, you know? And so I wonder if that's part of it. Like the actual competitive aspect versus a game that is played more casual and just, you know, there's not really a need to maybe they don't feel a need as much to change it, you know.
Well, and it's less complex game too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Games Workshop threw their hands up with Warhammer Fantasy, because of the competitiveness of it. There was, you have to be careful when you allow things to become competitive, because especially with us Americans, we are going to compete right down. You better tell us everything we're not allowed to do.
We're just going to assume
and
we can
everything that we are allowed to do, because we'll push the envelope. And I mean, Americans, just by our nature, we will push that envelope in every facet of our society that we can. we're so competitive with everything that if I can get a little bit of an advantage, I'm an American, we're going to take it. And if you don't say that I can't, then I can. Where, like with really old.
Now I see why you don't do tournaments. Now I can see why you don't do tournaments, Tim.
Well, that's exactly what you run into. Do you remember when the big thing in Warhammer Fantasy was corner to corner contact became a big issue. Then it became, well, what's corner to corner? Was it the individual guys on the base like it was in the rules, or as it morphed into the actual units being corner to corner? And then they got the people were pushing that thing to the nth degree. That is what broke Warhammer Fantasy. It was never designed as a competitive game. Competitive games have to be designed from the ground up as competitive games. You can't retrofit I can't think of the word. I'm trying to think of the word for this. Not scenario. These games that are thematic. They're like story driven.
Like campaign
and they're narrative. That's it.
Narrative
That's the word
gaming,
I'm looking for. Yeah, narratives. A Warhammer Fantasy was basically a large scale narrative game that you played with army, kind of like D&D in a small scale. Yeah, it came from the same guys. It just grew and grew and grew, but it was supposed to be narrative. And you were supposed to, as players, if something seemed a little wonky, then you guys worked it out. You didn't need a third party leaning over you, ready to throw the red card or the yellow flag here in the States about it. Oh no, you can't. That's a penalty. We can't allow you to do that. The problem with competitiveness is when people compete, if you don't say I can't, then that must mean I can. And that is exactly how that mindset worked. And it destroyed, in the long run, it destroyed the game. Now, there'll be hardcore competitive players that will argue against that. No, we kept it alive. No, what you did was you killed it because it wasn't designed for what you were using it for. And therefore, and it was really great what Games Workshop did, though. I mean, it's brilliant marketing. They said, oh, well, why don't we take that competitive fire and fervor that these people have, and we'll dangle these carrots in front of them. And they'll buy that new unit, and they'll buy that new box set, and they'll buy this new rule book and all this new bling that's out there. And then it got to the point where, remember back in the old days when you put your army together, only 25% of it could be like elite troops or characters.
Yeah.
It wasn't that old. I remember that too.
You had to have 50% of your army had to be just core troop types, right? Well, what happened by the end? It was all your stuff. And it was all the elite units. And the thing about the elite units what were they? More expensive. That every one of those big monsters or that big unit with the great big weapons
made them money.
All that money began to be the thing. And they were playing into that, that competitive mindset. Let's dangle this carrot out from zap that stuff up. And people did. And they do the same thing in 40K. They're very smart. They know the psychology that they're dealing with.
I almost find it's the opposite, though,
exactly.
in the sense. So it may be that that's an expensive model, like getting that Wraith Knight for 40K or whatever it is. But the funny thing is with Warhammer Fantasy, whether it be 6th edition or even the old world, the amount of painting you have to do for your infantry. Like if you actually look at a box of infantry and you look at like, you know, doing like a dragon or something like that, I'd rather paint a dragon any day of the week than you know, if it's just painting time over, let's say, 40 infantry, you know what I mean, or something like that. So it's funny, like the investment, because and also like these days now that those 40 infantry are probably, they're still a little bit less than that dragon, but they're probably about 60 to 75% of the price of the dragon, and probably about 4 times the amount of painting. In my mind, you know, at least, because it depends on the person, but I agree with all your points. Like I think it's all relevant. You know, as far as you know, like,
and it's
strategy.
old news. I mean, I've not come up with anything that people haven't heard before. I mean, that's the old arguments that.
No, and it's
you know,
it's interesting how that's what's changed the game in a lot of ways. It's an evolution, because you're right. Like I have the Warhammer Fantasy 3rd edition book, which is sort of from around the Rogue Trader days. I don't have the ones even earlier than that. But in those books, it is more like a D&D. It's more like a D&D experience, right? Like, you know, and then
it says have a game master on hand, and some of the part of it to say to run the game for you and make decisions.
But most people,
right,
that I find, and maybe it's just the people that play now, but at that time, after 3rd edition was released, they released Warhammer Armies, which was a book of lists that didn't exist prior to that you could use in 3rd edition to get points, to finally kind of have a way to point out your armies. And then after that, like as you were getting towards later editions after that, like I'm guessing it was 5th and 6th where they started to really then go more towards standardized, you know what I mean? It was all like your more standardized tabletop experience of pointing out your armies and your forces and the way things were. It was definitely different than 3rd, you know, by that point it was in full swing. But it's funny how the tournament mindset can change things a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People want to win though. And, you know, and that's the thing is funny is, narrative, like general thing is, you call it competitive, call it wanting to win. People want to win. They don't want to lose. It's not even like you could call it competitiveness. There's also just an aspect of people. They want to be able to win. They want to be able to destroy their opponent. They don't want to lose. And so like getting that, even if they're not a big tournament player, even if they never go to tournaments and all they do is come down on the weekends to the store, they don't want to come down to lose every weekend at the store. You know what I'm saying? Like I say that from personal experience. I've been in that. I've been in that situation. Like I've been in that situation. I've come down to a game where I had no idea what I needed to do to win. You know, and I saw that all the stuff I brought was the wrong stuff. You know what I mean? Like I painted all this stuff up. It wasn't the right stuff. And I needed to get something. I liked the game. I liked what I was doing, but I needed to get something so I could hang in there. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so it's funny.
Yeah.
But they know that, like you were saying, they know that. You know, like, and so it's interesting.
Oh yeah. And that is exactly why towards the end, it was all about your special and rare units, you know, and they were always your more pricey units, but you couldn't really play the game anymore if you just tried to play it with core troops and characters. You literally couldn't do it. And I used to love that. I would like when I had my undead, the number of skellies,
lots of them.
hordes, and it was like victory by denial. I mean, no pun intended with my Tomb Kings, but you know, you just bring so much that they just didn't have enough bullets. But towards the end, when you had the spell templates that were this big and you affected entire units of things, and you just basically swept units off the table. Yeah, that changed all that. You had to have all that special stuff, and I don't know. There was a point in time where it got pretty close to where within a standard deviation, let's say, of as close as you can get something like that. They got fairly close, I think, in 6th and 7th. They were honing in, and then there was a mindset change. There was a mindset change that said, no, we're not going to go for something that's balanced. It's too hard. We're spending too much time trying to balance this. Let the players worry about that. We are a business. We need to make money. Well, and that was just about the time what? They became a publicly traded company. And when they became publicly traded, everything changed. Everything changed. Their whole direction was about the dollar bill, not about the game. The game was just a vehicle to bring them the cash.
Yeah. Well, I have some fears that's, and I don't know if I'm being cynical or I need more time to think on it and play, but I have a little feeling of that's what's happening somewhat in Bolt Action. Again, that's just because that's one of the few games I can speak of, but they're encouraging you now to buy multiples of things.
Yeah.
Like you can now take 3 like medium machine guns, where it used to be, other than a certain specific army lists, or if you built a dual platoon, which was very rare, you could take one. You could take one tank. Now you can take 2 easily. You have to have 2 of some, because you have to have a command vehicle, which has to be at least an armored car and a tank. You can take 3 howitzers if you want. So it's like, because I have full armies that I could play multiple lists from multiple periods in German, American, and Soviet. But now all of a sudden, with this one rule book, I like my Soviets, I literally have to buy an armored car or a light tank to be able to use the tanks that I have, because I can't use 2 of my heavy tanks because there's just too many points. So now I need to buy another cheaper tank to be able to run the tanks I have. And just, like you couldn't take multiples of all those things before. Now all of a sudden you can, and then I think it's going to be extremely difficult.
Let me ask you a question, since I don't play Bolt Action. If you were to play someone who had all that stuff and you did not, well, how much of a disadvantage would you be?
Well, and that's what I was just going to bring up, is now it's going to be even more difficult to balance the game, in my opinion, because I've played 2 games of 3rd edition so far against the same opponent. We brought the same list that we built on our own, and it was a friendly game. We never tried to neither of us knew how it would play anyway. So it wasn't supposed to be like a cheese list. And it's about order dice, and order dice, you get an order dice for each unit, which can even be like a 1-man unit. So I had 18 order dice, and I have never had 18 order dice, even when I tried to maximize order dice in, I think the most I ever could get to was 16, and typically it was like 14.
And that was what, the Russians?
Yeah, and the Russians, I had 18, and I've played Russians for several years now. It's not like, well, I just have played this, first time, and he had 12. 12 or 14. He was German. Yeah. And he took 2 tanks, and one of them was I forget what it was called, what it is, but it's basically it's not turreted, but it's fully enclosed heavy howitzer. And I had no vehicles. I had 0. And I beat him both times.
Oh.
But what the biggest thing is, Bolt Action, the number of order dice can kill you, because you always have the initiative. I was always getting my dice. I could go maybe 2 or 3 times, and occasionally, if the luck was really bad, I'd go like 4 or 5 times before he could go.
Yeah.
And so you're getting all your good stuff off before he can.
Yeah, so I could get dual pins on certain units I was worried about, and then he had trouble activating that unit because I was getting the big jump on him. So it's hard to, but again, but points wise, and we both built lists that, and I wanted to include a tank, but I didn't have a cheap enough tank to have my command tank. So I couldn't throw like 800 points into tanks. Well, it was going to be about 500 points, which was too much. And so I just left it off, and I took some dog bomb squads to handle his armor and a couple captured Panzerfausts and just a few. I guess I had a gun that had an anti-tank capability, but because he also had a Panzer 4 or 3, but he had two pretty heavy beastly things, and his list made sense in the old way we played. But anyway, point being though, I feel like they're trying. It's going to be hard to balance now because you're going to get, like I told him, I said in a tournament, how are you going to bring a list that can handle all comers? That's what I've done historically in the past with the old rule set. You're limited on what you could bring, but you tried to figure out how it would work together, and there were different ways to, and if you really wanted to get into, sort of cheesy lists, there were ways, but it was pretty controlled. But now it's kind of like the box is open. I don't know how you control that.
What they can do, and when you were talking
restrictions.
Well, actually, I was thinking something else.
That's the only way I see it.
Well, and you might not like to hear this, but what they can do is they can do like what GW as an example and other companies have done, and is that they have more than one version of the same game. And so, like you can have like your standard 40K and you can have kill team. AOS has 3 types. They have like your AOS, which is like the new version of Warhammer Fantasy that kind of they made for, it's like not Warhammer Fantasy, it's not rank and flank, but it's like a skirmish fantasy game, but it's like more models. Then they had Spear Point, which is somewhere in between, and then they had a smaller game that was more like Kill Team, which I've heard the name, but I've not played it. But they have all the same models from the same companies selling the models. Versions of the game where you have to use lots more stuff, versions of the game that's intro candy, where you can buy a little box and there's 12 models that you can run around the table. There are medium versions of the game where it's somewhere in between, in some cases. And so you could see, not that they'll do this, but you could see like someday a version of Bolt Action that's closer to what, closer to an original where, it's like seeing a tank coming into the field is a really big deal. Versus having to have 3 tanks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Like, like where it's more like infantry based, but then like the tank comes in, you're like, oh my God, there's a tank, versus a game where it's like, oh, there are tanks, but they're selling tanks either way, and they're getting people into their game either way,
I just think Bolt Action's too small of a game, and Warlord's too small of a company to be able to mold. I think tournaments are going to find that they'll have to do some sort of limitations or in some way. And again, I need to play some more games, but it just some of the changes they made are
difficult
for me to think that was a good direction to go.
Well, you look at the medium machine gun, it's like the only reason a lot of people had one was because it came in a box set.
Yeah, because they started selling them that way. So now you can't pick a lot of the individual weapons teams. You can't. You have to buy their weapons team pack.
Yeah,
of course. But that being said, you don't have to buy your miniatures from Warlord. I mean, a Panzer IV is a Panzer IV. Whoever makes it. A GI, American GI is an American GI with a rifle, or it doesn't matter where you buy them. So I'm not. I'd love to know like if you could just on a one-on-one, lips are sealed. What were you thinking? Because they obviously love the game. It's their flagship, one of their flagship games. But it just, I don't know. I know I've said that since it started, but I don't have a good feeling about it. I really do miss second edition. I do need to play more, and we're going to change up our list next time and try some different things, but it does not have the same feel to me. But
It just feels like it was driven to sell more models from the company.
Because a lot of people surprisingly do like, oh, I want to get into bolt action, and they have all the miniatures I need, and they're packaged the way that like, and some of them come with the order dice. But like for people that already are into it, it's like, well, I don't need order dice, or I'm not using the brown ones for my Germans. I'm using red ones or whatever. So that's not helpful. And I've already got a medium mortar. I'm not going to buy a weapons pack that has a medium mortar in it, or whatever. You know what I mean? And I just buy it. Like I like Black Tree Design, so I'm using most of their models, and I like, I do have some Warlord, but when I started, I was largely Warlord because it was just easy, and they're affordable, and they're not bad models. So
I'll throw even one further. It's like my original army was Easy 8.
Yeah, your old Soviets.
Yeah,
I remember when you brought him. I played against him, and those are
something you never see on the table ever.
Those are unique. They're very nice models, but you don't see them. I didn't know what they were.
There's something to be said about having something change in a way that kind of you feel goes the wrong way versus never having experienced it that way and then just kind of experience it that way for the first time. And the reason I say that is like one of the guys that I'm playing Drop Fleet with, his big game's Infinity. Like he plays more Infinity than any game out there, like miniature game. And Infinity, in my opinion, it's a really good game. I don't know if Josh is still here because I know he was like going to throw dice across the room.
Blows his mind.
But losing his mind on it. But like, I actually think it's a skirmish game. Like it for many people, they like it.
It's very crunchy.
He's still here because he just put a comment about something else up there.
Yeah, Paul Hicks.
It is crunchy, but I guess I looked at it and I was like, well, this is an opportunity. I know somebody that plays it, really like it. They're in a group that really likes it. It's a thriving community within Calgary. And I thought, I got a lot of Infinity stuff. Like maybe I would have to update to the new rules. I've never used the last rule book, which is a waste, but when I looked at it, most of the miniatures that I have are no longer relevant. And so I'd actually have to kind of buy a new army. Yeah, and in particular, like it's not the case for everybody's army, but a lot of the armies they've phased out. And I have miniatures, unpainted, beautiful metal miniatures, because they're so nicely sculpted, but they're not generic enough. Like kind of like what we were saying before about like a GI is a GI is a GI. That's not the case with Infinity.
Yeah,
and so
each faction is unique.
And so I could ask myself, if you really like it, and if you're going to, if you have an opportunity that you're going to play it, why not just, bite the bullet, buy the new stuff, enjoy the game. Don't think about the stuff that you couldn't do. But like I said, if you knew, that if you feel like you should be able to use your old stuff, you bought the stuff, and you're already been burned once where like your models have been canceled, it's real easy. And I've decided like, I'm not going to do it.
Not going down that road.
No. I've spent way too much money, already. And like, I have no idea what they'll do in the future. Right. Like they could cancel the new ones.
Well, you've got games you enjoy playing already. Plenty of them. So call it good.
But like, I kind of, even though this is different, it reminded me of what you said, where like, if you have seen it work a different way before, it could be really disappointing to see it change to a new way.
Because I was just really hoping, like I'd said, at new edition timeframes, that they would just throw the, all that errata and FAQ stuff into the rules, and they'd released a lot of these campaign books that added some new special rules, like for sewer movement and all that. Get that all in the main rule book. That would be awesome. A few points tweaks so that you'd take like a Stug because they didn't make sense at those points. Get the medium machine gun to be help you where you would choose to take it, which they did fix that. That's better. And they did balance some of the points a little bit, but man, I just really didn't want to see them get into the core rules. I mean, the way combat has changed, and the platoon building system, I don't think it does what they want it to do, and I don't like it.
Sure.
I don't. So
looks like
it's a little disappointing.
Warmutt joined. Hey, Warmutt, thanks for joining in. we haven't. I know we're kind of approaching towards the end of the show here, so I'll just kind of go over the last couple of comments, if that's okay with you guys, and just
You bet.
yeah,
her down.
yeah. So Wormit says one-page rules has World War II army list: USA, Britain, Italy, Russia, Japan, and Russia. 2 Russias.
I was not aware of that. Actually, I might take just a peek. That'd be interesting to see how
Why
they
not?
handle it. Yeah.
Going back here, but Josh says, I remember seeing the Star Wars game in the comic store in 1990 or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, Star Wars always gets people's attention. The WEG Star Wars was fantastic. Also, I really liked the miniatures game.
West End Games.
Yeah, West End Games.
Another favorite company, this is Chris.
GDW.
Was GDW made so many of my favorite
that
rules.
Classic. And RFM,
Raffle.
Yeah, Raffle. I got some of their old minis back in the day.
I think 6 to 7 years seems fair. Gotta run. And that was Mini Wormut. And then Josh says, I only found out recently that Paul Hicks started Bolt Action Miniatures and sold it to Warlord.
Yes.
I thought and Alessio Calvatore, he was involved with the original one, right?
He wrote the rules for the original.
Yeah, he wrote the rules. Yeah, but I guess the Bolt Action Miniatures was its own company first.
Yeah, because Paul Hicks is a sculptor, and he had Bolt Action Miniatures, and actually the Polish metal miniatures they have that they still sell were sculpted by Paul. They haven't updated them because it's a minor nation, and you can see it, you can tell his style, and that's the one Bolt Action army I'd like to build yet. I have it collected up. I just haven't done it.
The French and the
beautiful
and the Poles are 2 armies I'd like to do.
Yeah, it's some early war stuff. It's different. They have cool uniforms. The Polish fight was, talk about courageous and in a tight spot. It's cool stuff.
Awesome. Well, that's it for comments. And so, I thought the topics were pretty cool tonight.
I thought so. A lot of interesting stuff, relevant and tied together, kind of.
Yeah, we skirted some political stuff there, and we didn't. There was nobody lost their mind.
Yeah.
We didn't have somebody in the comments do the all caps.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not productive to lose your shit.
No.
Anyways,
Mini Wormut's got one more comment there. What do you
think of it? Well, that could be a topic we could talk about. What do you think about the sound effect of miniature wargaming bat reps? I actually personally find them as a distraction. They're cute, but I suppose we could have a topic about it at one time. Like maybe like what are your favorite ways to make bat rep videos? Like all the things that people do, like when watching them, would be an interesting topic.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of the channels are always asking for input on how to present battle reports and what you like and don't like. Yeah.
That would be a cool topic, though, maybe to talk about. If you like watching bat reps, you might have a lot of opinions on that.
Yep. I do enjoy watching them.
Josh says, great talk. Sorry for being late. I'll check the rest of the show later on. Absolutely. Thanks for
joining late.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
Yeah. And thanks for the topic suggestion. Whether you meant for a topic suggestion, I think that might be a good one.
We're swiping it.
Yeah, Rusty's got it written down there. So
it might be something for our next show. It might be a dual topic for half a topic. So,
okay. All right, everybody.
Yeah, Josh is asking for feedback on his battle reports, and he's changed up how he does them. I try to watch those. Yeah, a lot of cool ways to do it. So we'll talk about that. Cool.
All right. Okay. Talk to you later, guys.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
See you, everybody.
See you in 2 weeks over here.